G'day everybody, it's Matt here from Skate Parts, and today I have got the 187 kilopads wrist guards and the 187 kilopads derby wrist guards for comparison. So the goal of both is obviously to protect your wrists in the event that you have a stack. Now the wrist guards originally were aimed more at skateboarding, regular old roller skating and inline skating. The derby wrist guards have come about more aimed at those that play derby to give you a bit more protection for regular hard impact while also giving you a little bit more flexibility. So let's whip some of these out and have a closer look at them. The regular 187 wrist guard is a fully open 3-strap system. The derby wrist guard is a combination slide-on 2-strap system, and there's a big difference that you'll notice in the splints. So this is obviously the under your palm side for both of them. The regular wrist guard has this smaller splint which is just straight, and while it is quite thick and should give you a decent amount of protection, it does only cover a small portion of your wrist and palm there. Now, the derby wrist guard, on the other hand, has this really large splint, which is almost as wide as the palm of your hand. So it goes quite a long way around and really does contour to the shape of your hand and also your wrist. And it comes down and is wider around your wrist as well for some extra support. The other big difference in terms of the splint is that the regular wrist guard does have a top splint up in this section here, which sits on top of your wrist. And so it helps to prevent your wrist from going back too far when you have an impact. Derby wrist guard has no top splint. This top section is totally flexible. It's relying solely on this bottom splint for protection. The benefit, obviously, is you've got a lot more flexibility to tip your hand up while you're wearing the wrist guard. So you have a little bit of a trade-off there with potentially slightly less protection on top, even though you've got more underneath, in order to get more flexibility. So other differences: the derby wrist guard has an integrated brow wipe here for wiping sweat off your brow. And in terms of construction, they both feature a fairly sturdy ballistic nylon. The derby wrist guards can breathe a little bit better because of this mesh on both sides of them, which is stretchy. Regular wrist guard does not have that through here. It's this ballistic nylon the whole way around, so they're not going to breathe quite as well, although they are open on the strap side here. There is also a difference in terms of padding. Now, there is very minimal padding in wrist guards normally, and so there's just a little bit of foam on the inside of these wrist guards around where the splints are, and that's it in terms of padding. It's not thick at all, so it's not going to give you much cushion. It's really just there to protect your wrist on impact and not necessarily to give you a cushy fall. The derby wrist guard does have a thicker foam. Here under the palm of your hand, we've got quite a thick foam section in the wrist guard. And then also in the pads themselves, they are a thicker material with a small amount of padding all through both the top and bottom sections of the wrist guards. So they are a more comfortable, more padded guard. Now, if we put these on, we can have a closer look at the differences when they're actually on your wrist. So I'm going to do the derby wrist guard first, just because it is a little bit harder to get on, in my opinion. It is slide on as opposed to that fully open 3-strap enclosure, but there is no pull tab to pull it on with. And so I find it can be a little awkward to get on. It's not terrible, but just a bit awkward. Then we've got these 2 straps. This one here, which goes around your wrist, and that's your main strap. And then this smaller strap here, which also should be looping through the splint and around onto the top of the wrist guard. So that is the derby wrist guard on, and we can see here that really does cover majority of my palm, and it does keep my hand quite locked in place there. I do have a lot of that upwards movement in my wrist though, and this does bend a little bit with it. This one, on the other hand, if I put the regular wrist guard on, we've got that strap goes around, and then these 2 smaller straps that join the Velcro on top. And so that's them side by side for comparison. Once again, you can see that splint is vastly different size-wise. And in terms of movement, that one is about as far as I can move upwards. This one, I can get it almost all the way up into a right angle. So this one really is giving you a lot more flexibility than this. I can't bend it forwards though. Like, that's as far as it'll go forwards, which is much the same as this one. In terms of comfort, This really does feel more comfortable on than this one. This one does feel quite hard, and for me the splint sits right on the top of my wrist bone. I mean, obviously that's what it's meant to protect, but it does mean for me it's a little bit on the less comfortable side. Another thing that's easy to overlook is while we have a very similar firm double-stitched seam around the top of the wrist guard on both of these, around the thumb we actually have a softer, stretchy kind of fabric used for the hem and seam here, which does make it a little bit less abrasive against your thumb, whereas on the regular one, it's the same material as used for the edges of the wrist guard. So I would say the regular one is probably actually a bit stronger, the material that's used around that seam there, but it is a lot more comfortable in the derby one. So if you're wearing these a lot, you're going to find that derby one is just more comfortable long term. So that's it. That is the 187 killer pads wrist guards versus the 187 killer pads derby wrist guards. I hope you found this video helpful. For more information and pricing on both of these, make sure you check out the links down in the description. And of course, if you like this video, make sure you give it the thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel for more videos like this from me. Bye for now.